So something I get asked a lot is how to get better at expeditions, because there's not a lot of good information out there for tips and tricks for expeditions. So I wanted to bring Blevins on. He's my co-host for Runeterra Radio, the podcast I do. He is really good at expeditions. I think he's played a whole lot of expeditions and almost always gets 7 wins. He only has a couple 6 wins, and that's usually the worst he does. So I wanted to bring him on, talk about tips and tricks, how he goes about drafting. This is a bit of a long video, I'll preface that, so I put some timestamps in, but we're going to talk about tips and tricks, how to be a little better, things to think about, and then he's going to guide me through drafting an expedition run. So hopefully this helps you out, but let's get into it. All right, so Blevins, you are the much better at expeditions than I am. So I wanted to let's help people out with expeditions. So how do we compare drafting or limited or whatever you want to call it in this game to something like Magic? How would you compare the two? How do you go about building a deck?
Yeah, so I got a couple of things that I got pre-prepared. We're ready to talk about them for expeditions in Legends of Runeterra. If you're an MTG person, and I'm sorry for the, we're probably gonna be referencing a lot of MTG, so sorry about that. But if you're used to the bread method for drafting limited decks, bombs removal, evasive, aggro, duds, some of that kind of applies, but not in the same ways as it does in Magic the Gathering.
Yep.
So instead of bread for MTG, I've come up with the 5 C's of expedition.
Okay.
5 C's.
So what are the 5 C's real quick?
So the 5 C's are combo, curve, counter, combat, and conscious.
Okay.
Okay. And we'll go through those throughout the course of this video. For deck building specifically, the first 3 C's apply: combo, curve, and counter.
Okay.
And a lot of these are still applicable in MTG, but in Legends of Runeterra specifically, combo is super, super important. Because of the way expeditions work, we're given little mini packs every time we pick a pack of 3 cards. We need to build a synergistic deck.
Okay.
If in Magic the Gathering, you can the first B is bombs. So if you have that, 6 mana 6/6 flyer, you just play it. It doesn't matter what the rest of your deck is doing.
Yeah.
You're maybe building your deck just to play that card. You're playing a bunch of garbage to play that card, because the bread in is tiered. So your bombs are more important than your removal, which is more important than evasive, etc.
Yeah.
The 5 C's are not that you need a balance of the C's. So you need to have you can't max out on one thing, where you kind of can in MTG. You need to have a balance, because if you max out on, say, combo, you maybe end up with a Teemo deck.
Yeah, which
we've all drafted that has it's a 1
yes.
win or 0 wins. And
I'm really good at the 0-win Teemo archetype,
Yeah.
So I've got that down.
You just pick the puff cap pack every time,
Yep.
and I have the most synergistic deck, right?
Yeah. No.
Well, no. So you need to have it be more balanced across the sea. So combo is building a synergistic deck.
Okay.
You need to have some synergy in your deck. You want your deck to be cohesive.
Yep.
If you start with a Fiora, you're really going to want to kind of be building around that Fiora a little bit. You don't, if you pick a Garen and go in the elite deck, you can actually have a very strong elite deck that is focused around elites, and that is going to be more powerful in this limited format than it is in Magic the Gathering, where it's like, okay, I can go like a goblin synergy or something like that.
Yeah.
You maybe first pick a goblin, but it's like, well, I don't know how many goblins I'm going to get in this pack, even if it's a theme in limited. You don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah,
in Legends
exactly.
of Runeterra, they're crafting the packs for you and giving you synergy, so you're going to have a higher power level there.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that is specifically to this game than other games is, since you do draft in chunks, like having a very synergistic deck, you can get those synergies and they actually give them to you. So that's that's definitely a huge tip. Is if you're coming, you can't treat this like a limited draft from Magic or Hearthstone or something, because it specifically wants you to play these synergies, and having something, like if you're playing Fiora, your opponent has Fiora, but you decided to get all the riposts and your opponent didn't, you'll probably win the game. So it's important.
Yeah, keeping in mind that you're going to be much closer to a constructed deck than you are in MTG draft, which looks almost nothing like constructed. So the first C, and these Cs aren't necessarily in order, but again, because they need to be relatively equal or even. The next C is curve. So this is pretty standard across pretty much any card game. Your mana curve needs to be smooth, which means you want it to be leaning more towards the front end, meaning you want 1s, 2s, and 3s, and you want it to sort of slowly smooth out down towards 4, 5, 6, and 6 pluses.
Yeah.
It's going to, and kind of wrapped into this as well is your sort of creature to spell, not curve, but combination.
Ratio?
Yeah. You need to have a good ratio of creatures to spells, because I'm sure you've experienced this, because I know I have.
Yep.
You end up having, you're just like, oh man, I've got so many creatures, I can just play a creature every turn. Well, your board space max is on 6, so you've got a full board and your hand is full of creatures and you can't do anything.
Yeah.
So and also your spell mana is just going to waste every turn that you don't use it. So keeping that in mind as well. But you need to make sure that you are able to hit those early drops, especially since we're playing on the sort of shared turn, so you can play something every turn.
Yep.
You want to be able to make sure that you have plays to make in the early game, or else you can get very, very far behind. And that is a recipe for disaster.
Yep. Yeah, curve is important. It's one that I always forget to think about, because since that's like kind of the downside of, drafting in big chunks, is you're like, man, I want to get all these big cool things, because they're giving me like I have 23 riposts now in a Fiora, and you're like, oh man, well, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, I think this is probably the one that I didn't actually struggle with it much, because I made the active decision to be like, I need to make sure I have a lot of 2-drops and 1-drops in my decks. Also, they happen to be quite good in this game, which doesn't hurt. So, making the maybe tough decision or the unfun decision to take the pack with a 1-mana 1/1 versus the big 8/6, I think is in a lot of. I mean, it's a case-by-case basis, but you need to be making more of those picks than picking the 8/6. Yep. If that makes sense. The next one, I think this one's counter. I think this might actually be the most important one of all. Now, again, you can't max out on this, but I think it's the most important to understand and conceptualize. This one's counter, which, again, the C's, they're not 100% lining up, because I don't just mean take deny, because that's the only counter spell. What I mean is you need to be playing reactive spells. You need to have a good mix of reactive spells in your deck, and counter can also kind of transition into the second section, which is the in-game and playing, because you also need to play reactively.
Yeah.
So many times I have, let's use the Fiora deck as an example. I'm attacking with my 3/3 Fiora. I pull their 3/3 creature, and then I slam a riposte.
Yep.
And go, yep. Hey, guess what? Have it. I'm gonna kill your guy. And they go, well, I'll Will of Ionia your Fiora, and you just get so far behind.
Yeah.
The little things, the little tempo plays, where you spend a card and then you spend 2 cards and you get 2 for 1 or something like that. Opening yourself up to that is the way that you lose games if you're doing it, and the way that you win games if you can find ways to get your opponent to 2 for 1 themselves.
That makes sense.
And building, and in order to get to that place in the game, you need to make sure that you have those cards. So again, you need to make sure that you have your Will of Ionias, your single combats, your your
Whirling
removal
Deaths.
spells, Whirling Deaths. Yes, you need to make sure that you have a good number of those cards in your decks, to spend your spell mana, and B, to have that interaction. You are, I was playing a co-op. I was helping a friend with a expedition run, and he asked me, you know, why do I want to have so many spells in my deck? And what I thought of on the spot, but actually I think kind of resonates, is I've lost so many more games where I just had, you know, powerful creatures.
Yeah.
And my opponent also had powerful creatures, and I just didn't have interaction in my hand.
Yeah. If they have a barrier and you don't, or
Right.
they have the single combat and you don't, you know, things like that,
Yep.
you're going to lose a lot of games.
Yeah. Just think about how good it feels to be able to attack and just have a Will of Ionia in your hand.
Yeah.
If they do anything, you get to react to that.
Yep.
Being the player that reacts is so much more powerful in general than being reacted to, especially in this game. So that's counter.
So these are the first 3 C's and these are the things you want to play at a deck building. So the next 2 you have are things that you want to be doing when you're actually playing the expedition, correct?
Yes. And again, counter kind of goes into both, but the next one's combat, which is pretty straightforward. It's, you need to be doing combat math, which sounds like a, well, duh, but you'd be surprised. And also the added caveat here, you'd be surprised in Magic or Hearthstone where it's not that complicated.
Yeah.
The added caveat here is that unlike Magic or Hearthstone is we have the open attack. So you not only are planning out for what you're attacking now, you can also sort of apply that to your next turn immediately without them being able to react. Because you can attack without, you know, you can set up blocks and be like, okay, I'm going to be left with this and this. If I trade here, I'm left with this. They block. Okay, they're not going to have the chance to add another blocker before I get to attack. So I can actually just win here. The number of times that my opponents have put themselves dead to my open attack is a lot. And also the number of times where I knew I was dead and they just didn't open attack is also a lot, because they're like, well, I want to get another creature out. It's like, okay, well, now I'm playing a creature that stuns 2 of your guys, so I'm effectively blocking 3. Utilizing the open attack and factoring that into your combat math is super, it's just going to be something that's going to give you so much of an advantage in Legends of Runeterra right now.
Yeah, I think that's one thing. In expeditions, like being able to do combat math better and thinking, like you said, thinking not this turn, but like the turn or 2 ahead. Because there's so many times where, you know, you're playing a game and you'll realize it a lot from your opponent more than you'll think about it for yourself. Be like, man, they're blocked. Like sometimes you need to block unfavorably because you're going to win the next turn or win in 2 turns. So like, I think that's a very important thing to think about, just to keep consciously in your mind, like remembering to do proper combat math is super important.
Yes. And I guess another little caveat to that is like, use your life total as a resource.
Yeah.
So many times with newer players or people who aren't familiar with high level card games, it's like, if you win at 1, that's just as good as if you win at 20. You don't need to be at a super high life total. You don't want to be blocking. You don't want to be making bad blocks just to keep yourself above 15 or something like that. Just things I've observed, but that's more like an honorable mention that kind of goes.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
The last one here is conscious. So you want to be conscious of what your opponents could be playing. Again, this one's kind of a stretch for the word, but it begins with the letter C, and that's the most.
Had to have a 5th C word.
Had to have a 5th C word. This is being aware of what combat tricks, what effects, what cards your opponents could be playing, and more importantly, what are they likely to have, and what can you beat and not beat? You know, are they playing Freljord? It's like, okay, well, if they have a frostbite and reduce your followers attack to 0 when you attack, are you going to lose the game because of it? Well, maybe reconsider making that attack. You know, if they're the Fiora deck and they have a riposte in their hand, which they're very likely to have, should you make this block? Should you you know, play this spell here? being aware of what those possibilities are and playing around them accordingly is, I mean, it's a higher level concept and it's going to take a lot of time to get used to that. But that is the sort of thing that pushes you above and beyond and can get you into the like consistently 5-6 win plus expeditions.
Yeah, I think this is the big one that's going to get you a lot between like the 6 and 7 wins is knowing what your opponent could have a lot, especially based on the champions that they've picked, because it's not the same as in a constructed match where you're going against a Mist Wraith deck. You know, at least like 26 out of 30 cards. You kind of have a good idea of what they're going to be playing. Whereas in this, you know, if they have an Ash, you just know they're going to have a lot more Frostbite cards. If they have a Fiora, you know they're going to have more barrier cards. Thinking, what champions do they have? What are combat tricks that they could have? What are things that they're likely to have based on the champions in their deck is very important.
Yeah, and again, just like knowing what you can and can't beat. Don't play around something that you're going to lose to if they have anyway, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to go for it, but that's a higher level that's higher level concepts that we can get into in other videos. But that's the basic thing. And again, you know, I personally use Mobalytics. They have all the cards listed. If you're, you know, wondering, obviously you can look at them in your client too. But they have a lot of cards listed. You can always have that handy to just play around. Okay, well, do they have the possibility of having the +3/+3 in ephemeral?
Yeah.
And then on the sort of the inverse of that is like, oh man, well, if they counter this spell here, I'm going to lose. It's like, well, they're not playing Ionia. They're not actually able to, you know, play deny or something. Or you can play differently. I can play my Fiora deck differently when I know the deck can't possibly have Will of Ionia in it.
Yeah, exactly.
So just being aware of and conscious of what your opponent can have and likely has is going to push you over the top.
Open draft, first pick. What are you usually looking for in your first bucket of picks here?
Okay, one of the first things I'm looking for is to look in the first checkbox is the champion I'm picking not Vlad? That's
okay. Yeah.
That's actually an exaggeration. I have not played a lot with Vlad. I have played a decent amount of Noxus, and I feel like I get baited by it every time. So that's a personal. I might just be playing Noxus and building the deck incorrectly. I try to make it very aggressive.
Yeah.
And that might be my downfall. I also try to build the discard theme deck, like the Jinx Draven type of list, and I've not had a lot of success with that. So, this is actually super interesting because, like, do you usually go for the strongest champion, or do you go for like the strongest overall? Because, like, when I see this, I see like Vladimir may not be amazing, but it comes with a Whirling Death, and a Transfusion is a really good combat trick as well. Whereas like Fiora is insanely strong, but you're taking this plucky Poro and a Chain Vest. If it weren't for that plucky Poro, I would maybe windmill slam that Fiora, because Chain Vest is actually, I think, a low key a very good card.
Yeah,
it has burst, which is an extremely, I think I personally underrated the power level of burst.
Yeah,
and Chain Vest is something that it gives her that forever. Like, she does not lose that. Mystic Shot and Scrap Dash are, I think, much better than the Chain Vest and Plucky Poro, which makes me lean more towards the Heimerdinger than the Fiora, though I wouldn't fault anyone for taking the Fiora here.
Heimerdinger it is. Bam!
Ba-boom.
So when you're going into your second champion pick, do you try to get something that synergizes with the first one, or do you just kind of go whatever else is the next strongest?
I'm looking more towards synergy in general. I've had some, like, if you think about how a deck would play out if you played like Draven, or let's say Zed Tryndamere, that's gonna kind of be an awkward deck. I mean, even like Darius Heimerdinger might be awkward. Again, Noxus has done me dirty too many times. Lux is an interesting one, especially with Heimerdinger. So that would lead us down we're going to be playing a lot of spells, and we're going to try to do stuff with that sort of control type of build, which is a fine build. I've had success with that. Darius, I think, is actually going to lead us down a similar build, which makes me like the Reckless Trifarian a little bit less. We're going to be going like a Heimerdinger aggressive type of build.
One question here and another tip. Do you ever evaluate rarity on these at all? Like, so you're like, oh man, this Zed comes with 2 rare cards, or these are commons. Does that ever matter to you?
Sometimes. The only time I think I even consider it or even look at it, honestly, is if I have 2 packs that are like, if I think that they're exactly the same in terms of power level, I'll likely go for the one that has like a rare or an epic in it, because you're less likely to get that again.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh man, well, I may never see it's more for epics versus anything else. Like rares and commons, I feel like they show up similarly often. If there's an epic in a pack, it's like I might not actually see this card again. Whereas like I'll probably see another Whirling Death, or I might see I mean, you're probably you're likely to see any of these cards again. But if there was like a Laurent Chevalier that you really wanted,
so we're going Nox and Might.
That's my thought. I mean, this is your draft at the end of the day. That's my thought process. At the end of the day, you're clicking the button.
My thing is Whirling Death is my favorite card in Expeditions. So
I think we're aligned here. I like having 1, maybe 2 unlicensed innovations. I don't like more than that. I personally, man, I love Legion Rearguard.
Yeah.
But this is where we kind of think about the first C, which is combo, and like I don't think we want to play a Heimerdinger aggressive deck. Now we can say, but I think if we take this the middle pack, we're basically saying, yeah, I mean, we'll just play the Heimerdinger as value, which is not unreasonable though.
Yeah. And this is where we were talking in the last one. By picking Noxus, you're going to get a lot more packs like this, right? Where you get the, like, hey, these are 2 really strong 1-drops. We want you to get very aggressive.
Man, this is a tough pick, and it really kind of shapes the way we go.
Yeah, because this pack here, the 3rd pack, a lot of times is gonna like determine what you're getting for your other packs, because it's wanting to give you a deck that you want to play. So like if we do pick this, we're probably gonna get a lot more big spells. If we get this, we're probably gonna get more aggressive cards. Right.
So here's the consideration. If we pick the middle pack and go aggressive, we are likely going to start wanting to think about like Draven or Jinx as our next champion pick when we absolutely win the first game, or like, because like PNZ Noxus, that's the aggressive line of it. If we take the Spellbound pack, I think it actually opens us up to play a third region of like Ionia and pick up like a Karma or something. Or also, obviously Ezreal would be a good PNZ.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know what your play style and deck type is, so I think we're probably leaning towards Spellbound. And I think even me personally, I just like have been burned so many times by playing a bunch of guys that can't block.
That just happened.
Yeah, it happened.
So here's something that you have to be kind of paying attention to when you are drafting, and this is something that I just windmill ignore all the time, is when they start adding, like offering things like this, like it's giving us an On Guard and Relentless Pursuit. It's a Demacia pack. So if we do pick this, we're going to be in our 3rd region of Demacia. So just remember that, because I forget it all the time, and then I'm like, oh man, now I'm stuck with Demacia as well, and that doesn't synergize with what I'm doing. Yeah.
Well, luckily, I don't think we're going to even get baited into taking that pack in this deck anyway.
We're definitely not.
Super great. On Guard is a good card, not in this deck.
I'm leaning towards the Shroom and Bloom.
Yeah, I actually don't even think it's close. I think that's an easy
because I mean, this is a good card, and this is also just a fine card. Gets you spells, gets a guy. Blam! Let's do it. Okay. Although,
don't
so
think that's
here's
what-
here's okay. Do you go? So this is like just good value, right? You have the augmented, and you have this. She puts on a lot of pressure. She's whatever, but we get 2 combat tricks here in the middle. Another whirling death and a might, which is a burst spell, can win the game and put on a lot of pressure or give you valuable trades. What do you think here?
I think that the Noxian Might is likely going to fit our deck better. The tricks are always going to be good, and the Augmented Experimenter is an insanely powerful card, but I think we're not in the discard synergy deck, and I think we're much more of a control deck. So in a lot of times it's going to be awkward and clunky in our hand.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely leaning towards Noxian Might here.
Plus, whirling death is my favorite card. So
Whirling Death is just a really good card.
this is tough because it's just bad.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. So
Yeah, I mean, this is an okay guy. This guy's not great, but
yeah, Golden Crush Bag gives us he can block some dudes.
yeah, whatever. Bad. Let's go. All right. So this one's kind of interesting because like Thermogenic Beam is so strong, but this guy kind of doesn't do anything in this deck. It's
I don't know, do we have
okay.
6 costs, 6 plus.
You can't see it because you're facing the way. We have one
Right.
spell.
1 so far. Thermogenic also can technically count towards
Yeah.
that, I think, if you cast it for 6 or more.
Might's pretty good, but if this was me, I would probably look at this just because Thermogenic Beam is so strong.
Yeah, we already have 1 Might. I also don't think that this is a deck that we get a ton of value out of Might from.
Yeah.
And Academy Prodigy and Clump of Lumps are both fine.
Yeah, they're decent.
What's our spell count right now?
6 spells, 8 units.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards the Spellbound pack as well. I don't know.
Same.
I mean, here's the other thing to think, and this is kind of where that common versus rare kind of comes in. Your Clump of Lumps and Academy Prodigy are both fine cards, but they're very replaceable in what they're doing. A lot of times they're like, I want to have a 2-drop that is going to trade with another 2-drop, and that effect is pretty replaceable. So.
Yeah. Or like this guy, you know, he's not
kind of a finisher.
Yeah, like he can
hits.
he can be insane if, you know, you've cast a 6-cost spell, like an 8/4 quick attacks, but just sick. So I think I'm leaning towards this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the Noxian Might pack is pretty strong. I mean it does give us some pressure. Elixir of Wrath is pretty decent. See, this is showing part of my reason I don't like Noxus is I'm like I end up getting these. A lot of their like removal and tricks are just things that push more damage or like get you to trade up, which still 2-for-1s yourself.
Yeah,
it's like if you play Elixir of Wrath on your Legion Rearguard and trade with their 5-drop, okay, that's great, but you still are down a card in general. The problem is that I think Shunpo is an interesting card, and you can really get people with Rally in general because people rarely are playing around that, or even can play around it. I mean,
I would honestly like the fun pack that I would normally like want to get is probably this, but I think the Elixir of Wrath pack is probably better.
Yeah, we also don't have any 1-drops, and we really want to have them, even though this
goes into the
worse when you're not hacking on 1 or on odds.
This goes talking back into thinking about curve, you know, because right now we do have a lot of big stuff. We don't have anything early, so I think if we're trying to take our curve into account, we'd want to grab this.
Yeah, I like it. I like that pack. I also really like Plaza Guardian.
Yeah,
I think Plaza Guardian is similar to that card.
And Mystic Shot is just insane.
Mystic Shot's really good. We definitely, and again, I think we would, if we expand it out and think, would I rather have 5 Mystic Shots or 5 Elixir of Wraths? I think the answer to that question is pretty clearly Mystic Shot. So I lean towards, I definitely want my first Mystic Shot over my second Elixir of Wrath. And maybe Trifarian Shield Breaker or whatever he is better than Plaza Guardian. Oh, I was right. It is Shield Breaker.
Yeah.
He might be better than Plaza Guardian, but I don't think he's that much better, if better at all.
Yeah,
I
and
like
we have
Plaza Guardian a lot.
right now we have 8 spells, so this will be our 9th spell.
Mm-hmm.
And this pack is bad. So I like the Plaza Guardian.
Yeah.
This is just strictly worse than a Plaza Guardian, so.
This is a pack where I think it really highlights our curve, the curve C. What are we looking like right here? We've got a lot of 2s, a lot of 3s, not a ton of super high drops. So I think we can, like, Clumpalumps and House Spider again is very similar to the other pack where it's like it's a 2-drop that you can play. House Spider is a little bit better than the 3-1, I think, but you know, it's certainly not as powerful as Savage Reckoners and Shield Breakers. So I think our curve right now gives us a little bit of room to actually play the.
Yeah, I would go with this pack myself because we don't really have any finishers. We have like a couple, but
we have Heimerdinger. And
we have Heimerdinger and Plaza Guardian.
Yeah, so let's get some meat.
Let's get the meat.
Yeah, I mean, Puffcat Peddler is kind of a win condition, kind of, but no.
I think it's Whirling Death.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ooh, Progress Day is real strong.
I feel like it's just got to be Progress Day just on its own.
Yeah, I mean, the Jury Rig Zonite Urchin pack is actually pretty strong. It's pretty good, rather. It's not like super strong. It's just a good value. But, I mean, Progress Day is just a really, really strong card.
It's just absurd. I'm taking that.
Yeah. And it even has a 2-drop, which
is not bad. I don't know. I feel like I want a 3rd Mystic Shot.
Yeah, I think so too. The Trefarian Hopeful is not going to be a 5/2 enough
very often.
So definitely don't want to even consider that, really.
So I would lean towards this pack.
Yep. As well.
Like, I would pick her late if we had like 6 Mystic Shots. Let's go, and a couple Get Exciteds or something.
But let's get the 6 Mystic Shots first. Before Mystic Shot Puffcat Peddler is a perfectly reasonable pack.
Yeah, and we have a lot of spells. Like right now this will be 14 spells. So, I like this. Let's just do it.
All right.
So now we get the option to remove this bad used Cask Salesman for a Mystic Shot.
Man, all of these trades are good. Can you take all of them?
Yeah, right. So
although Scrap Dash Assembly is a pretty decent card.
So looking at trades, what do you usually evaluate? What's more important? Are you trying to get bad cards out more than trying to get good cards in, or how do you usually go about that?
I think in general, yes. I would rather make a slight upgrade, like taking out a bad card. But sometimes you just want my Fiora deck that's like 5-0 right now. I realized I have way too many spells and not enough creatures. Or followers. I need to get my follower count up, and I had like a couple of like dud spells, so I made the trade there to do that, even though there might have been a like an upgrade.
I feel like the biggest like upgrade from bad to good is Cast to Mystic Shot. Like this is okay, and this is good. This is like fine, and this is good. Whereas this is just like terrible, and this is great.
Yeah, the Scrap Dash for Whirling Death is like a minor upgrade.
Yeah.
So I would lean towards that
Blam.
Mystic Shot.
And we have a beautiful deck here. So yeah, there you can kind of see just some thought between. Sometimes it's nice to see in practice like what you would do in these situations. That was actually an interesting draft, anyways. So it was
that was
nice.
An interesting draft. I'm very interested to see how you play that one out.
I'll update everyone on Twitter when I guaranteed get 7 wins again.
If I feel like if I had that deck, that would be like a 2-win deck for me.
I got all my Mystic Shots. Can't lose.
A Mystic Shot is good. It's very strong. I think we made a lot of sound decisions, and we talked them out. So
yeah, it's important. Talking things out, very important. Well, Blevins, thanks for helping with this guide, coming up with the 5 C's. I think that'll help a lot. I know it helps me. Hopefully this is helpful for you guys. If you want to see more, I know I want to do, I think we should do a like a champion tier list. I know you're working on that right now.
I'm working on it in my mind, at least.
Yeah. So we'll come out with our Runeterra Radio official champion tier list. The best thing about tier lists is that everyone gets to roast us in the comment section. Like, I think Teemo was a tier 1 champion.
Why are you guys talking so much crap about my guy Vlad? He's so good.
He's the best one there is. So yeah, we'll be coming out with that. But let us know in the comments what you want to see, if this helped you, any of that stuff. Appreciate it. You guys are super awesome. And yeah, thanks for everything. And until next time, you guys stay saucy. Oh, that's so funny. Oh my God, that's so funny. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you like what you saw, it would mean a ton if you would hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell notification to be notified when I post some videos, share this with your friends, all that kind of stuff. You're amazing. I love you. And until next time, you stay saucy.